6-year-old Hannah Whitlow collapsed in the middle of her first-grade classroom on a Tuesday morning, and when her teacher rushed to her side, she found the little girl trembling, pale as paper, whispering the same 3 words over and over. Please don't tell. What was she hiding? And why would a child that young be so terrified of the truth coming out? Ms. Eleanor Briggs had been teaching first grade at Cedarbrook Primary for nearly 15 years. She'd seen sick kids before. Stomach bugs, fevers, the occasional playground accident. But this was different. Hannah wasn't just sick. She was shutting down. Her small body was giving up, and the look in her eyes wasn't pain. It was fear, pure bone-deep fear. Eleanor knelt beside her, brushing the hair from Hannah's forehead. "Sweetheart, I need you to tell me what's wrong." Hannah's lips trembled. "I can't. They'll take me away." Eleanor felt her chest tighten. She called the school nurse, who took one look at Hannah and immediately dialed for emergency services. Within 20 minutes, Hannah was in an ambulance, and Eleanor was sitting in the back with her, holding her small, cold hand. At the hospital, the nurses moved quickly. Vitals, blood work, IV fluids. Hannah was severely dehydrated, malnourished. Her skin was dry and cracked, her eyes sunken. The pediatric team exchanged glances. This wasn't just a bad day, this was chronic neglect. But here's what didn't make sense. Hannah wasn't dirty. Her clothes, though worn, were clean. Her hair was brushed. Someone was trying. Someone cared. So what was happening? Eleanor stayed with her through the initial evaluation, and when the doctor stepped out to confer, she leaned in close. "Hannah, I need you to be honest with me. Are you safe at home?" Hannah's eyes filled with tears. "I have to be. Grandpa needs me." That single sentence opened a door Eleanor hadn't been prepared to walk through. Hannah lived with her grandfather, Abel Whitlow, in a small, aging neighborhood called Riverside Meadows. Her mother had passed away 2 years prior after a long illness. Her father had been out of the picture for years. Abel was all she had left, and Abel was forgetting things. Eleanor didn't need a medical degree to know what that meant. 2 days after the collapse, Eleanor drove to Hannah's house. The neighborhood was quiet, tired-looking, lawns overgrown, paint peeling. The kind of place where people minded their own business because they had enough problems of their own. Hannah's house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac. The mailbox was overflowing. The porch light was on in the middle of the day. Eleanor knocked. No answer. She knocked again. Finally, the door opened. Abel Whitlow stood there in a stained undershirt and pajama pants, blinking at her like he wasn't sure where he was. "Can I help you?" Eleanor introduced herself. Abel's face softened when she mentioned Hannah, but the confusion didn't leave his eyes. He let her in. The inside of the house told the real story: stacks of unopened mail, dishes piled in the sink, a faint smell of something spoiled. The living room was cluttered with forgotten projects, half-folded laundry, old newspapers, a plate of food left out so long it had hardened. Abel shuffled toward the couch, muttering something about how he just needed to rest his eyes. Eleanor's heart sank. This man wasn't neglecting Hannah out of cruelty. He was losing himself. And Hannah, at 6 years old, was trying to hold everything together. Eleanor spent the next hour gently asking questions. Abel couldn't remember when he'd last taken Hannah to the doctor. He couldn't remember what they'd eaten for dinner the night before. He thought it was still summer. It was late October. When Eleanor finally left, she sat in her car for 10 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to decide what to do next. She couldn't ignore this, but she also couldn't destroy the only family Hannah had left. Back at the hospital, Dr. Nadia Farrow, a sharp-eyed pediatric specialist, delivered the news Eleanor had been dreading. Hannah's medical issues were serious. She had chronic pelvic nerve dysfunction, a condition that caused bladder control problems and severe abdominal pain. It was treatable, but it required ongoing care, medication, and regular doctor visits. Hannah had received none of that. "She's been living with this for years," Dr. Farrow said, her voice tight with frustration. "She's been in pain, probably daily, and no one knew." Eleanor felt sick. Why didn't she say anything? Dr. Farrow glanced toward Hannah's room. Because she was afraid. Kids like her don't ask for help. They hide it. They think if they're quiet enough, small enough, they won't be a burden. That night, Eleanor sat with Hannah in her hospital room. The little girl was curled up on her side, staring at the wall. "Hannah," Eleanor said softly, "why didn't you tell anyone you were hurting?" Hannah didn't look at her. "Because then they'd know something was wrong, and if they knew, they'd take me away from Grandpa, just like they took Mama." Eleanor's breath caught. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" Hannah's voice cracked. "Mama got sick, and then one day people came and took her to a place, and she never came home. Grandpa said she couldn't take care of herself anymore. I don't want that to happen to him. If I can take care of myself, maybe they won't take him away." Eleanor felt tears sting her eyes. This little girl had been carrying the weight of an entire household on her 6-year-old shoulders. She'd been starving herself to stretch the food. She'd been hiding her pain so no one would ask questions. She'd been holding her world together with sheer willpower and love. And now it was all falling apart. Eleanor made a decision right there. She wasn't going to let Hannah disappear into the system. She wasn't going to let this little girl lose everything because the world had failed her. But first, she needed help. Over the next week, Eleanor Briggs did something she'd never done before. She called in every favor she had. She reached out to parents, school staff, local volunteers, anyone who might be willing to step up. And slowly something remarkable began to happen. A safety net started to form. The Martinez family, whose daughter was in Hannah's class, offered to help with meals. A retired nurse named Claire volunteered to check in on Abel twice a week. Dr. Farrow connected Hannah with a pediatric care coordinator who could navigate the medical system. A social worker specializing in dementia cases agreed to evaluate Abel and help him access resources. For the first time in years, Hannah wasn't alone. But the relief didn't last long. 3 weeks after Hannah's collapse, Eleanor got a call at 2 a.m. It was Claire, the volunteer nurse. Abel had wandered out of the house in the middle of the night. A neighbor found him walking down the street in his underwear, confused and disoriented. He didn't know his name. He didn't know where he lived. The paramedics took him to the hospital. Eleanor met them there. By sunrise, the doctors had made their recommendation. Abel needed to be in a memory care facility. He was a danger to himself, and by extension to Hannah. Eleanor's heart shattered when she had to tell Hannah. "Grandpa's going to be okay," Eleanor said, sitting on the edge of Hannah's bed. "But he needs help now. More help than we can give him at home." Hannah's face crumpled. "No. No, please, I can take care of him. I promise I can do better. I'll be better." Eleanor pulled her into a hug as the little girl sobbed into her chest. "Sweetheart, this isn't your fault. You've done everything you could. You've been so brave. But it's not your job to take care of him. You're the child. He's the adult. And now we need to take care of both of you." Hannah cried for hours that night, and when she finally fell asleep, Eleanor made the hardest phone call of her life. She called Child Protective Services and requested emergency foster placement. She also did something else. She applied to become Hannah's guardian. The system moved slowly, but Eleanor moved faster. She completed background checks, home inspections, interviews. She converted her spare bedroom into a safe, warm space for a little girl who'd spent too long sleeping in fear. She stocked the fridge, she bought clothes, she enrolled in foster care training courses. And then, just when things seemed to be stabilizing, a new complication arrived. Caleb Darrow walked into the hospital one afternoon asking to see his daughter, Hannah's father, the man who'd been in prison for the past 4 years on non-violent charges, the man who'd signed away his parental rights when Hannah was 2 years old. Eleanor met him in the hospital lobby. He was tall, thin, with tired eyes and calloused hands. He looked older than his 32 years. "I heard she was sick," Caleb said quietly. "I wanted to see her." Eleanor studied him. "You haven't been in her life for 4 years." "I know." His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. "I made mistakes, big ones. But I'm out now, I'm clean. I've got a job. I want to make things right." Eleanor wanted to be angry. She wanted to tell him he'd lost his chance. But when she looked at him, she didn't see a deadbeat. She saw a man who was drowning in regret. "She doesn't know you," Eleanor said. "You can't just walk in and expect her to trust you." "I know," Caleb said, "but I have to try." The first meeting between Hannah and her father was awkward and painful. Hannah didn't remember him. She clung to Eleanor's side, silent and wary. Caleb tried to talk to her, but every word felt forced, desperate. After 30 minutes, he left. Eleanor found him sitting in his car in the parking lot, head in his hands. She knocked on the window. He rolled it down. "You want to be in her life?" Eleanor asked. Caleb nodded. "Then you need to understand something. She's been through hell. She doesn't need a hero. She needs consistency, stability, someone who shows up every single time, even when it's hard." Caleb looked up at her. "Can I do that? Can I be part of this?" Eleanor took a breath. "We'll figure it out." Over the next 2 months, something unexpected happened. Caleb started showing up. He came to doctor's appointments. He sat quietly in the corner during therapy sessions. He brought Hannah small gifts, coloring books, a stuffed animal, a journal. He didn't push. He just showed up. And slowly, cautiously, Hannah started to soften. But the court system moved faster than their fragile new relationship could handle. The judge asked a simple question: who would be Hannah's legal guardian? Caleb wanted custody. Eleanor had applied for guardianship. Hannah was caught in the middle. Dr. Farrow testified. The social worker testified. The Martinez family wrote letters of support. And then Caleb did something no one expected. He stood up in court and said, "I want what's best for my daughter, and right now that's not me. Not yet. Ms. Briggs has been there for her when I couldn't be. She's given Hannah stability, medical care, and love. I'm asking the court to grant her guardianship, but I'm also asking to stay involved. I want to be part of her life. I want to earn her trust. I just need time." The courtroom was silent. The judge granted Eleanor full guardianship, with Caleb maintaining visitation rights and co-parenting involvement. Hannah was safe. She was loved. She was finally getting the care she needed. 3 months later, Eleanor and Hannah visited Abel at the memory care facility. He was sitting in a sunlit common room, staring out the window. When Hannah walked in, his face brightened. Just for a moment, recognition flickered in his eyes. "Hannah," he whispered. Hannah ran to him, wrapping her arms around his frail shoulders. "I'm okay, Grandpa. I'm safe now." Abel smiled, and for a brief, beautiful moment, everything was okay. Outside, Eleanor watched through the glass. Caleb stood beside her. "She's going to be all right," he said quietly. Eleanor nodded. "Yeah, she is." That afternoon, Eleanor took Hannah to the park. For the first time in years, Hannah ran. She laughed. She played. She was just a kid. And Eleanor stood there, watching, knowing that sometimes Saving a life doesn't happen in one dramatic moment. It happens in 1,000 small acts of love, repeated every single day. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button, drop a comment, and tell us what you think. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. Because stories like Hannah's remind us that even in the darkest moments, hope can still find a way in.